Boom, we're live back here after Christmas. Wakey, wakey. So, stats. Really, all that we're doing is drawing conclusions by looking at information, analyzing information, and understanding what is that telling us? What's the information mean to us? So, first step is deciding on a topic and forming some way of gathering information about it. We're going to work on surveys. So, you're going to ask someone like, what's your favorite pizza type? And they have a list to choose. Now, you got to have a list to choose because there's an infinite number of pizza types, correct? So you want to say, well, or you can decide what's your favorite pizza place, Panago, Domino's, but you got to have a list of kind of 4 to 6 answers for people to choose from. Now, in the real world, making up your question for a survey takes professionals a long time because they don't want to mislead or lead you to making any preformed decision. They want it to be ambiguous so they get your true feelings because you can totally sway people. For example, if I said to you, hey man, should we increase jail sentences? Versus, you know what? Criminals are getting out of jail really soon. Should we keep them in there for longer? Well, one of you is probably going, you know, my second sentence, it's got you thinking, right? And so I'm not going to get your true feelings versus the first one is really simple and easy. I'd probably get your true feelings. Whereas the other one, I tried to lead you towards the answer. Okay. So for our questions, we're going to keep it real simple. What's your favorite pizza type? Do you like Pepsi or Coke? Which one? All right. Or you'd be like, what's your favorite hairstyle? And you have a list. Or what's your favorite types of shoes? And you all pick Nike, even though they suck and always fall apart. But whatever, they look cool. So you chose that. All right. Then we're going to collect data. So we're going to work on collecting data today as well. Okay, we'll display the data in a chart or a bar graph. So that's what we're looking at, collecting data, how we do that, and then we're going to display the data. Those are two things we're doing. So first of all, we have a tally chart. So we have the tally, okay, we have the frequency, and we have the type of something. So this question, boiled, fried, omelet, poached, scrambled, what are they thinking they're asking you? Yeah, how do you like your eggs? Okay, and then once you answer, they do a quick tally. At the end, they'll do the frequency. The frequency is just how many there are. So for the first one, how many people like boiled eggs? 17. So the frequency would be 17. Okay, and you write 17 in there. And then what you're going to do is you're going to make a bar graph. Now we're not over here. You do the bar graph for question number 1. Okay. We're going to do that later. We're going to do an example with a simpler question. A yes or a or, well, it's a 0 or a 1 type question in regards to what do you like, Pepsi or Coke? So we're going to start by gathering some data. Okay. Pepsi Coke taste test challenge. We're actually not going to do a taste test, but we're going to say my preferred drink is blank. And we're going to make a little tally chart. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to ask, the question is, do you prefer I can't write, Coke or Pepsi? Okay, and so we're going to have the type column. Then we're going to have the tally column, which should be your largest, your widest. Okay, the type doesn't have to be that large. And then we have the frequency. Now for the type, we have 2 answers, Coke and Pepsi. Now, this is going to be very, very, very simplistic bar graph and tally chart that we're doing. But just to get us started off, that's what we're going to do. So you're going to have to tell me whether you like Coke or Pepsi. Which one do you like? Coke. So you put a single dash. Naya, you got to choose which one. Pepsi. Okay. Aren't you a different color so it stands out more? So we had one Coke, one Pepsi. Good. Sharon? Coke. Mason Mo? Coke. Reese? Coke. That's 4. Mason? Coke. So for 5, you put the sideways dash. Sorry, sideways line. Okay. Zine? Coke. So making sure you leave a bit of space. Okay, so it stands out. Tyson? Coke. That's 7. Avery? Coke. That's 8. Olivia? Coke. 9. Person? Coke. So 10. So it's another group of 5. So we got to put the cross line. Good. Evan? Coke. 11. Sam? Probably Pepsi. One of those, eh? Just kidding. Curtis? Sorry? Oh, is it? Is it? Okay. Sorry, Curtis, would you like? Coke or Pepsi? Pick one. Coke. Coke is said. Boom. So that's at 12. Landon? Pepsi's better. Boo. Nathan? Coke? You're just going with the flow, Nathan. Be original. Nevaeh? Coke? Oh my gosh. Good. Aaron? Coke? So that's 15. So for another group of 5, you got to do the sideways line. Where are we? Gracie? Coke? Oh my gosh. 16. Jenna? Coke? Oh, you guys are following the trends. We got Griffin, last one. Sorry? Go with Coke. Okay. And I'm going to go with Coke as well. I'm not a big Pepsi fan. Our other class was almost 50. Well, it wasn't 50-50. It was way higher, though. It was like 10 and 16. So there's a lot closer. So for a frequency, then, we count up and tell us how many tallies we have. So the first one, we have 19 tallies for Coke and only 3 for Pepsi. Boo-hoo, Pepsi. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make a graph. For a graph, we have to remember a couple things. Don't turn it over. Graphs. Number 1, title. Number 2, label the axes. Okay. And you should have units in brackets. Ralphie, if I can hear your music with all these fans, it's way too loud. You only have one set of ears, and once they're gone, you can't grow them back. Title, labeled axes, units in brackets. Then we have to have the appearance. So we have to have spacing. So what you don't want to do is have your graph all right here in the corner. You don't want to have your graph so that it's all right here shrunk down low. You want your graph to show as much space as possible and take up as much space as possible on the page. Okay, so this is bad. This is somewhat better. But when you can make your graph as big as possible, that's the best. Okay, and to help with your spacing, okay, you want to have your maximum number or your maximum value divided by the number of squares. Now, when I do say squares, it's kind of like you're looking for lines. Okay, so I'll talk about that in a second. Often you guys plot your numbers on the middle of a square, and it's not really accurate. Okay, it's the lines where you should be writing your numbers. You guys ready? So what's the first thing we need? Starts with a T, ends with idle. Awesome. So we can title it Coke versus Pepsi. We often use the word versus, okay, and we shorten form. And that's usually one axis versus the other axis, or what we're comparing, okay? So Coke versus Pepsi. So down the bottom, we will have our type of pop. Now we're going to be American, we're going to call it soda. So we'll call it the soda type. Okay. Now, look, we have two of them, but we have all this space to take up two bar graphs. So we don't have to have Pepsi here and Coke there. That one makes sense. It'd just be on the one little spot of the grid. Okay, so you want to make it a little bit larger. Whoops, what's going on here? There we go. All right. What I would do to make it stand out is I would use, first of all, leave some space. If you can. And we can use like 3 or 4 bars for Coke. Then we can leave some more space. And then we could do another 4 bars for Pepsi. This way, what you'll notice is that I used over half. Okay, that's your kind of your goal. Over half of the grid for your graph. Okay, over half of the grid should be used. If you use less than that, it's kind of ridiculous. You have all this graph grid to use, so make it large. Okay, so don't write that down because you don't need that on there. But now we're kind of got the bottom set up. Any questions about the bottom? Again, don't write down. You don't have to write down the word space. That's just for me to help you know why I'm leaving it. It's to make it look prettier, easier to see, easier to read. You know they say pictures say 1,000 words? You want yours to say a lot more than I don't know what I'm doing. Okay? Make it say more words, make it easier to read. Good. Then over here we're graphing our frequency, so you'll turn your paper sideways and you write down frequency. Okay. And this here you could put down people, because that's what your frequency is showing, how many people like that soda type. Okay. So what we need to do now is count how many bars we have going up. So we can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Go, tell me. Count. How many? 22. Okay. So what you're going to do here is our maximum number is 19 people. And we're going to divide by 22 bars or lines. Okay. So when you do your division on your calculator, 19 divided by 22, it's 0.86 people per bar. Okay. So this is what we're figuring out is we're figuring out our scale. Okay. What's the value of each line? That's what we're trying to figure out. So we can have each line worth less than a whole person. However, it can't be less than 0.86. What we typically do then is we round up. Round up to a nice number to graph. Yeah, and Tyson had a good idea. Right? We got to round up so that we have enough, we can fit the graph on the grid. So we want to round up to 1 person per bar. Okay? 1 person per bar. So each bar represents 1. Now I don't write a 1 in here. I write a 1 on this line. So if we graph up to this line and shade it in, that's the value of 1 person. That's why we have to write it up to that line, not in between the squares. We always put it on a line. Now, if you start writing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, when you look at it here, that's a lot of writing. Okay? You typically don't do that when you graph. What you can do is you can skip a line or every other line. Or in this case, you could write down nothing. You could do all your dashes, but don't write down numbers until you get to the number 5. And when people are reading your graph, they'll say, oh, 5 bars is 5. That means each bar is 1. Okay? So that's what we're looking to do is you got to just read it a little bit. So there's 5. So then we can go and do the other ones. 6, 7, 8, 9. Make a bit of a longer line. What should I call that longer line? 10. Okay. 11, 12, 13, 14. And what should I do with the 15th line? Make it a bit longer. Make it stand out more. Okay, that's 15. Now I got to go up to 19, so I have to keep going. 16, 17, 18, 19. What should I do with the 20 line? Make it bigger. Now, even though we're graphing 19, did I write 19 on the graph? No. But you and anyone looking at the graph should easily be able to figure out that that's the 19 line. Okay. Now, going back here to Coke, we're going to start shading in our bars. Now, you go all the way up to 19. So here's the 19 line right here. And I'll shade across. And I'll outline. What's that? Yeah, what I like to do is I like to make an outline first. Now, ideally, when you're doing your graphs, you have different colors. And then you can do a legend. And I'll talk about that in a second. I do have pencil crayons for you. Okay. Now, the reason why I do this is so that I can stay in between the lines and just do a nicer job. Okay. Now that I shaded it in, I can go and shade in even more. Okay. So you can see, sometimes I go really quickly. Sometimes I'll do diagonal bars on purpose. Sometimes I'll do horizontal bars. For each one, I can do something different. Okay. Now, typically for a bar, I'll do it all the same. So, for example, this one here, I'll do it all the exact same. So I don't want it to look like they're different bars. I want them to look like it's all Coke answers. Okay, for the people that want to do the Coke, as in Coca-Cola. Let me specify. There are no misconceptions. Okay. There we go. Then for Pepsi, what was our maximum number for Pepsi? 3 or 4? I can't remember. 3? So for Pepsi, I'll go up 3. 1, 2, 3. Go over and go down. There we go. Now, could have I made my bars wider? Yeah, I could have gone to 5 bars or 6 bars wide, and I'd still have enough space. But when you look at my graph, I am taking up over halfway of the graph. That's our goal. Take up over half. Okay. Now, what we have to do is we should do a little legend. Okay? So you'll do a little bit of red shading here in a square. And that is for Coke. Then you'll do a little blue shading in a square. And that is for Pepsi. Okay. Almost all graphs will have a legend, so keep that in mind. You want to do a legend, make one up. Notice I did on the outside rather than on the inside. Jenna, keep taking music out too. Obviously, you're distracted. So you don't want to have your legend on the inside because it's just a little bit, you can see where I have it on the inside, a little bit harder to read, isn't it? Blends in a little bit. Well, if you did use one color, you should do different patterns. Now, for this, it's not the end of the world, Ralphie, okay? But for more complicated ones, you want them to stand out more, okay? So think about your final presentation, that's all, okay? Yeah, you could do different lines, like I showed you there, right? Different things like that, totally. And then, so for example, I could do something like this and say, okay, this is root beer, right? If I had root beer, right? I could say, oops, this one here is, what's another one? Fanta. Trying to get the idea, right? And the other one I could do like the other way, shade the other way, and this here is 7-Up. Okay, so yeah, different patterns are easy to tell as well. Yeah, and when you're doing this on your computer, you got so many different choices too, and it does it for you nicely. Okay, all right. Any questions that you guys have? So this one's done quite nicely. Got a title, I got a legend. I'm taking up over half of the graph. I figured out my scale. You don't have to write your scale down, but I would, so Mr. Barker can see it and you can always remember it. Okay? Got my axes labeled, very descriptive. So what you're going to do, you're going to start by doing this one right here, collecting data. So you're going to answer, only cross off number 2. Okay? You're going to do number 1, answer those, and then you're going to graph over here, graph question 1. Okay? So you guys will be able to finish this, and then we're going to start the second part as well. All right? But the first part is graphing this. Feel free to use the pencil crayons I have. Where did they go? Someone's put them back behind the board. If you want the pencil crayons, come up and grab them. Okay? Assignment 10.1, go.